You are very welcome back to Your Play or Mine, the only podcast that combines the worlds of the arts and sport in one show. Today, I am bringing you episode 2 of season 1 with a really wonderful guest. She is probably best known for playing Aisling in Derry Girls. Can we have a moment for that vocal solo? But she is also part of a musical duo called Voxen, and her puppeteering work has been featured on shows like The Dark Crystal and the upcoming show Star Wars Acolyte, just to name a few. On the sports side of the house, Beccy is a huge ice hockey fan, particularly the Belfast Giants, loves her ice hockey. And she also played badminton at a provincial level for Ulster and at a national level. So you may not have already known that about her. It's not a super well known fact, but there we go. And we chat about it in today's episode as well. As you will hear over the next 40 minutes or so, Beccy is just truly the loveliest human, and she's so easy to chat with, and was very open in our conversation, which I very much appreciated. So without further ado, here is Your Play or Mine episode 2 with the lovely Beccy Henderson. Enjoy. Beccy, welcome to Your Play or Mine. I'm so glad that I get to chat to you today because we actually worked together back in November of last year, but it feels like a lifetime ago. So it's lovely to have you back for a chat.
Yeah, it's so lovely to see you again and chat to you again. I'm really delighted that you asked me to come on your podcast. I listened to your first episode and absolutely loved it. So I'm really glad I get to be a part of it as well.
Yeah, it's so exciting. And you'll know from the first episode, I kind of have the same 3 questions for everybody. Starting off with, what is your very first sporting memory?
I have an odd first sporting memory, but it's kind of a core memory where I think about 8 years old, and we were given an assignment in school to write what we wanted to be when we grew up. And my brother was really into golf, my older brother, so I was younger sister, and he'd be playing golf in the garden all the time, and then I would go out and play with him and loved it. And then I wrote in my assignment that I wanted to be a golfer when I grew up, and my teacher failed it and was like, you clearly didn't understand the assignment. It's like, because I wanted to be a golfer. And it was such a core memory, I think, because I was like, well, my brother's allowed to want to be a golfer, but I'm not. It was like one of those first things I feel of like gender inequality in sport. It was so, in her defense, maybe, I mean, I was a quirky kid, and years previous, my project would have said, I want to be a scientist on aliens when I grow up. So maybe she was like, you're not being your authentic self. But there's another world in which I think it was more okay for me to be a scientist on aliens than it was for me to be a professional golfer.
Wow. Oh my God. I feel like that's a can of worms that we could do this entire podcast could derail.
I'll come back.
We'll circle back. We'll circle back.
Yeah.
Moving on to hopefully a more positive note. Who is your personal sporting GOAT, your greatest of all time? I have a feeling I know who this is, but tell me.
I have multiple. I love Sergei Bobrovsky is my favorite hockey player. He plays for the NHL. He used to play for the Columbus Blue Jackets. He plays for the Florida Panthers now, but he's just amazing. I've got to see him play, and it's one of those people that just makes your jaw drop continuously. And he's won, the NHL has like a prize for the top goalie of the year, and he's won it like 2 times, like the best goalie in the NHL. So I just think he's amazing. But I also, it started hailstoning. Can you hear it?
I was like, I wonder if that's like a dog shaking off water, but it's actually hailstone.
mental. I can't even really see out my window. It's healing so hard.
It's pathetic. What is it? Pathetic fallacy for the for the teacher failing the assignment.
Yeah, I'll never have my dreams.
Oh my gosh,
yeah, that's hilarious. Okay, well, yes, my greatest of all time is Sergei Bobrovsky from the NHL. Adore him. But also my current favorite, because the Belfast Giants are like my team, my ice hockey team. And my current favorite Belfast Giant is Matt McLeod. Big love for Matt McLeod.
Yes, absolutely. I know that because you posted the signed jersey recently, and you were like, "I now understand the stress of asking someone for their autograph."
Oh my gosh, yes. That was so hard to do. That was so hard to do. All I had to do was walk up and say, "Can I have your signature?" But it took everything in me to do that. And then he was so lovely, and he was so
good.
up for having the chat. But I had nothing
Oh,
left.
amazing.
It took everything for me to just say the thing. So we didn't chat. I left. I walked away as fast as I could. And yeah, so nervous.
Yeah, but you did it. You got it. It's all good. You have the evidence now.
I was so brave. I'm very proud of me. But yeah, I totally understand it now. I will have an absolutely new compassion when people approach me for stuff. And people have approached me. There was one time in Mexico, and a girl approached me and she just started crying. And I kind of feel like I understand this emotion now. There's a lot happening. Yeah. It's very overwhelming. I know. And I was like, yes, I get this is really hard to do. So much more kudos for anyone who comes and asks me for a photo or a signature or anything.
Absolutely. And then the last one is, what is the most emotional sporting moment you've ever experienced, either yourself or as a spectator?
Yeah, for myself, I was a very athletic child. I was really into badminton, and played from the under 11s to under 21s. It was a huge part of my life. I played for Ulster. I played for my country, but I never had an emotional connection to it. And I would go to tournaments, and every tournament I would bring back 3 medals, one for singles, mixed, doubles. And my family ran a sports shop, and we wouldn't even get them engraved so that we could just sell them on in the family sports shop again, so we could resell them. So I just had it seems a shame to say, but it just didn't really mean anything to me. I didn't have an emotional attachment to it. It was just something I was capable of doing, so I did it. But as a fan, I get so emotionally invested, full in. And as discussed, the Belfast Giants is my team. And last year, it was a really gorgeous moment where the Belfast Giants won the treble last year, which is that they won all 3 titles in the Elite Ice Hockey League, which no team has ever done before. It's amazing.
Wow.
It's magical. It's a really magical time to be a Giants fan. But then even more than that, they were hosting this charity game to raise funds for Ukraine. It was for the Ukrainian Hockey Dream charity. They were doing a tour. It was called the Hockey Can't Stop Tour, so that these players could still play. Their stadiums had been destroyed. They were completely displaced. They couldn't practice. They couldn't play. They couldn't compete. So they did this tour, and the Giants hosted a game, and it was the game, the first game after winning the treble. So they had brought the trophy back to the home ice for the first time, and it was amazing, and it was really celebratory, but it was so gorgeously grounded by this event. It was so humbling. I remember just feeling really emotional the whole time, because it just stripped away all the trophies to be like, what a privilege that we get to enjoy this sport in this way, that we still have this stadium that we can go and watch in, that these players still get to play. It just brought it back to all this kind of the core things that we get from sport and that we feel from sport, and the community and all that energy. And yeah, that was, I feel like, the most emotional I felt over a hockey game before. It was really gorgeous and it was
Yeah.
playful and fun. And yeah, would love more of that.
Wow, I love that they did that, and also the timing of it, like you say, like that's I totally understand. I would have been like a blubbering mess in that situation. I just that's like partly why I started the podcast, because I know there's all these amazing stories of how sport brings out emotion. Just it's such a human connector, like you said, and I think that's it's fantastic, and you get to do that with like thousands of other people in the same room essentially, which kind of
Yeah.
like I think intensifies it, even more because you're all there for exactly the same reason. I want to get into puppeteering because I genuinely think it's a criminally underrated form of the arts, and it doesn't get spoken about enough outside of like the puppeteering community. And I feel that way primarily because before I saw you and your team of puppeteers in action on set, I had no idea what was involved. And I also think there's probably a pretty big misconception that a lot of the stuff that we see on big budget shows, especially, is like robotic or CGI driven, or it's not real. But in
Yeah.
reality, there are multiple human beings involved in getting a performance literally just out of a single puppet. Talk to me about like the physicality that's been involved in some of your most challenging puppeteering jobs, because I've literally seen you getting like forearm massages to try and deal with the physicality that's involved in this.
Yeah, it is such a difficult profession physically that I don't think people appreciate, or just they're not aware of how
Hmm.
difficult it is on your body, because you're just doing totally unnatural things. There aren't The muscles don't exist to support what we are trying to do. And I think that's a big part of the problem, where dexterity is what you need to like gorgeously manipulate these creatures, but they're really heavy. So you're using your dexterity muscles for strength, for like the strength to
Yep.
hold them and the weight, but then also needing the control to deliver a gentle or delicate performance.
Mm.
Especially with creature work, things like the Dark Crystal or like Star Wars, um, where it's you're wanting them to move in a much more earthly way of this world, as opposed to something like the Muppets, where it's bouncy and fun and you're a puppet.
Hmm.
Um, so it takes a huge toll on your body, and puppets are heavy. Creature puppets are made of foam latex. Also, if they have animatronics in them, there's just
Mm.
metal, moving metal in there, like servos and stuff. And then if they've got costumes, the costumes can be made from like real leather, and
Yeah.
everything's just adding weight, and all this weight is just on your hand or on your arm, or it's so, and you're just taking all the weight of that whilst trying to deliver a performance. But
Yeah.
even if it's the lightest puppet, the puppet that you saw me use, incredibly light puppet,
Mm.
but when you're holding it for an X amount of time, when you're holding it for 12 hours out of the day,
Yeah.
but also it's the angles that you're forced to hold it at. I would compare it to if you were to hold a broom out in front of you, but from the end of the handle, and then
Yes, that's such a good comparison.
try to manipulate it delicately. And
Yeah.
that's what you're dealing with. You just don't have the control, and you're constantly fighting for that control. And then as film works, the schedule is just so intense. Like rest
Mm.
time does not exist. I don't think I
Hmm.
would have been needing all the arm massages that you saw me getting if I was getting like a day off in between, or a break, or just
Right.
points in which to rest my arms and allow them to heal from the strain. But you just can't have that in this in the film and TV industry. It's so fast and loose. It's like grinding to get through, and it's very like you're having to pass the finish line again and again and again as well.
Mm.
You know, you push yourself, oh, we just have to make it through this take. So you push and you do that final thing. I did it. Okay, great. We've got extra time now. Let's do that song again. And then you're like, oh. So then you're pushing yourself again. You just about achieve it. You're well past your like energy bank now and your body bank.
Yeah.
And then they'll throw another thing in and another thing, and you're constantly they're just moving the goalposts a little bit each
Yeah.
time. Which I think if you knew that was going to happen, you can help your body, you can pace yourself. It's like running a marathon, but this industry doesn't have that structure. I think
Yeah.
makes
Yeah.
issues.
That's so interesting. It's like a marathon of sprints. It's like
Yeah.
literally just these little sprints, but they obviously they add up and they add up. What is the sort of like within the community? What are the discussions that happen around that? Or like when you're in training, how do they even try to prepare you for that?
There isn't a lot of prep for that. It's just something you'll be told, something that you'll be
Okay.
aware of, or you'll need the strength to do this. I know for some theater things, uh, when they're doing auditions, they will check that people maybe have the strength to lift this puppet on stage every night.
Yeah.
But it's very much a baptism of fire type of niche because there isn't
Hmm.
there's not a ladder, I guess, to climb in it, a very clear structure of like if you want to become a puppeteer, you start here and build up. I know a lot of people fall into it from dancing because they have
Hmm.
this movement skill and this strength and control of their bodies and understanding
Yeah.
of movement that's really helpful. But it's just something that we kind of have to deal with. And also, you turn up on a job and you never know how heavy the puppet's going to be in advance. So you can't prepare for these
Mm.
things. You also maybe don't know how it's going to operate. Like, I didn't know before turning up on that job on the first day that we did together how that puppet worked.
Yeah.
So I couldn't prepare any muscles for how that was going to be because I didn't know what ones I would need. Uh,
Yeah.
so yeah, unfortunately, it's not something we get to prepare for. It is something that on certain productions they cater to well, especially if you're working for like the Henson company, where they will make sure that there's an osteopath that gets to see you
Oh,
at
amazing.
least once a week and like realigns your
Okay.
body. And on the Dark Crystal, we shot for 11 months. So our bodies were really
Wow.
dead by the end, so that we had the
Yeah.
osteopath in every single day.
Wow. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness, 11 months. Like that is, I mean, that's like shooting a Lord of the Rings trilogy
Yeah.
situation. That's insane. Um,
Yeah.
wow. Yeah, it's sort of like the way I'm thinking about it in my head is it's sort of like signing up for a sporting event. You sign up for something sight unseen and you show up and they're like, okay, the sport is rugby, or but then they could equally say like the sport is tennis. You know what I mean? Like it's literally just
Yeah.
showing up, and you haven't, as you said, you can't really train, which is it's such a unique thing. And then on top of that, as you said earlier, you have to add the performance, which is like another side of your brain, and it's also
Yeah.
another sort of it's just another layer on top of it. It's incredible, really, like what does go into these performances.
Yeah. You can't, there's no preparation, especially if it's something like creatures on Star Wars. We
Hmm.
There's no preparing for that in advance because no one has that type of expensive kit in their house to be able to
No,
have this creature
imagine.
full latex and animatronics. Like you just can't practice this stuff. No one could afford to practice that. The expense of just
Hmm.
running these creatures is insane. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's exactly like that, sort of unseen. Today we're going to be doing this.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's really, really impressive. And yeah, just something that I think just needs to be talked about more, because it's fantastic, and it's very different from a lot of other arts, I think. Something that intrigues me, that I think is very much linked between the arts and sport, is the fact that you'll often find yourself in scenarios where the people that form your community also form your competition. What has your experience been like of building connections within the creative community, knowing that you're also competing for jobs with some of these people? You know, it's like applying for a job, showing up to the interviews, and suddenly you walk in the room and it's like all your friends are there. What has that been like for you personally?
Yeah. It's absolutely that. I feel it's very similar to the sporting world. For me personally, I am not a competitive person. So I don't know if that makes me
Hmm.
the right person or the wrong person to be talking about this, but from my experience, I do believe, I am sure there are people who competition is much more light to them, so they can find
Hmm.
the positivity in that and the fuel in that, and
Yep.
that is a helpful thing for them. um
Hmm.
but if competition brings you negativity on yourself and directed towards other people, I think you need to reframe it. And uh I believe in the arts, there is room for everyone. I truly
Hmm.
believe there's room for everyone. And that is my reframing of it. And for me, it is community over competition. Because
Hmm.
if you embrace the community, if you build those bonds and have your friends, and it's such a difficult industry that I think the community is so valuable to have people who understand exactly what you're going through, who have the same struggles,
Yeah.
who can help each other. I help my friends with their self tapes, their audition tapes. Even if we're going for
Hmm.
the same role, we help each other.
Wow.
Um, Especially in puppetry, it's like, how did you do your setup? And we'll send each other our setups, and
Yeah.
maybe we're going for the exact same job. Um, but I think building that community for me takes away the competition, because those bonds are then so
Mm.
strong that if they get the part, I got the part. Like
Yeah.
I win too. I get to share in the victories of my friends like they're my own. And I think that's
Mm.
something, if you are someone who struggles with the competition or comparisons or jealousy, I think that's a great reframe to build yourself into and restructure it for yourself, because there is room for everyone.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I really love the way I'm just like thinking immediately my brain goes to hashtags. It's like hashtag community over competition. Like that is really that's awesome, because as you said, it's like it's helping each other, but it's also educating each other. You know, I'm completely with you. I don't believe in, you know, gatekeeping information or skills or any of that stuff. I just don't
Yeah.
think it serves us um as human beings, really. I just don't think we're
Yeah.
built to, like, you know, keep things from each other like that. So I really like that reframing. And as you said, I mean, as far as comparison, like in a world where everyone is constantly comparing themselves to everyone else, that is really a wonderful way of reframing it. So I might have to steal that. I quite like it. It's a great answer.
Take it. You can take it.
I think, you know, resilience is kind of connected to that too. You know, it's something that it's required of anybody really that intends to kind of make a creative career or a sporting career for themselves, because the even if there is room for everyone and we believe that, I think the scarcity of opportunity sometimes is the blocker that gets in the way.
Yeah.
And it's kind of natural they're going to experience rejection at some point or other. How have you kind of taught yourself to be resilient, you know, so far in your career, whether, as you said, that's through like physically auditioning in rooms, obviously before COVID, or now it's like a lot of self-taping,
Yeah.
um, which is a funny one because you don't, the energy I feel of the audition stays in your home. You know, you don't get
Yeah.
to like expel it. You don't like, get to leave it in the audition room. So I know that's a big question, but how do you navigate that?
Uh, the resilience is such a hard thing. And I think you have to be able to embrace the peaks and troughs of it also,
Mm.
because there will definitely be times where you just can't be positive about it because it's so hard.
Yeah.
And I actually had a dip like really recently, so we can just be
Mm.
vulnerable and talk about that.
Yeah.
Because you just audition and audition and audition, and now it's self tapes. So you get absolutely nothing in return for your audition.
Mm.
You don't even know if they watched your tape that you spent
Right.
hours learning your lines for, that you inconvenienced your friends because you needed someone to come and be your reader for you,
Yeah.
and you're kind of forcing other people to adjust their lives, you're adjusting yours, and you get really invested in these characters. Um,
Mm.
and you like make this tape and then you send it off, and that's it. Nothing happens.
Yeah.
Sometimes there are very few. I can only think of one actually, casting directors that will tell me if I don't get it. And the rest of the
Okay.
time, if you don't get it, you just never hear from them until they're maybe
Mm-hmm.
asking you to audition for something else. But yeah, I got a rejection email just very recently, and it's been after a string of just never hearing back and putting lots of effort
Mm.
into things, and it just got me. And it tends to be, I'm more upset about the really small jobs that I don't land. The jobs
Interesting.
that are maybe a smaller scale than what I've already achieved, like a smaller
Mm.
part than what I've already played. I think because then that feels like, well, that's more achievable. I've done better than that, so I should be
Mm.
able to get this. So then not getting it affects me. It just yeah, it hurts and there's no way around it. But yeah, the most, when I got that hit most recently, I was so down. I like just wasn't capable of doing anything that day. And I sat down and I like picked up my ukulele and I just started like I wrote a little song about how sad
Oh.
it was, and like it just that I just keep trying and nothing's happening and I'm on this losing streak. But through doing that, maybe I'll eventually share it with the world. I don't know. It feels quite vulnerable, but maybe it would help someone else. But through writing that, just through the act of doing it, I started laughing at myself a little bit because I maybe made some funny rhymes happen,
Yeah.
or just even out loud acknowledging your own failure is kind of funny. And by the end of the song, I'd kind of topped myself around again into being quite hopeful, because it was like, well, if I don't do this, then I have to quit being an actor, and I don't want to do that. So I guess I'll just
Yeah.
keep doing this. I'll just keep failing. I'll just like, and I kind of brought myself around to this like hopeful place again. It wasn't like a happy place,
Mm.
but it was hopeful. And I think having the strand of hope definitely keeps me in the game. And I do love this industry so much. There's so much that I love about it, and I think that's what makes it worth all the things that I don't like about it.
Mhm.
And makes those struggles worth it. So I don't know if that was maybe the act of getting to create something that helped. So
Yeah.
maybe as like a therapy, if you like to paint or you like to write poetry or sculpt clay or whatever that outlet is for you in terms of creating, because I guess not getting the acting job, you're not getting to create, you're not getting to do the thing you want to do. So then
Mm.
creating something on your own, maybe that's what was so therapeutic about it. I'm not really sure, but that got me out of that rut recently.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I think you're absolutely right. I think everyone has their comfort things that they go to right when they are in that low place. And I think it's awesome to be able to create something out of it. It's just it like you
Mm.
said, it's kind of filling the gap of like, well, I didn't get that, but like here's what I'm going to do instead. And it's still something really positive. It's still something very, you know, it's just really proactive, even if at the time it didn't feel like it. You didn't go into it with a goal. I think that's really awesome. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and then you get to say that you made a thing.
Yeah. Yeah,
That,
exactly. There's
yeah,
still a you don't go into it with a goal, but there's still like a product at the end of it. Like that's amazing. I love
yeah,
it.
yeah,
Um, Speaking of, so for the jobs that do come through and the performances that you do get to complete, there's obviously a sort of performance adrenaline that goes along with it, right? And I think this is something that any sports fan can relate to because I don't know about anyone else, but my heart rate like is insane during matches. I just can't
yeah,
can't cope, the emotional roller coaster. But there's also the kind of decompressing that has to happen as well afterwards. And I think it's really interesting with acting in particular, because as you said, you might have to do a scene, basically as many takes as as it takes to get it right. How do
yeah.
you deal with that, sort of building yourself up to the level that you need to deliver the performance, but then equally decompressing afterwards, but knowing, okay, I might have to go again. Like it's a lot of limbo, isn't it, emotionally?
Yeah, it is a lot of limbo. I learned quite quickly that staying in the headspace doesn't work for me. I know some people, in order to prepare so that they're ready to just turn their character on and do the
Mm.
scene, kind of stay in there. Maybe if it's an emotional scene or very dramatic, they'll kind of stay quite serious and quite somber. But I really quickly found that that drained me so much more. So
Yeah.
I'll be just laughing with the crew and like messing
Hmm.
around between takes. And then the second action is called, I can be crying, screaming my head off, running from danger, whatever the thing is. But for me, it helped to build the switch that I could just switch it on and then I switch it off.
Mm.
As soon as the take is done. And in a way, I think that's a skill of acting. I'm pretending, I'm making you think I'm feeling the thing. I'm not feeling it at all. I'm not I'm not scared at all. Um,
Hmm.
so I think I'm definitely of that camp over maybe method acting and actually having to put yourself through these emotions in order to show them. I would
Mm.
definitely vote for the healthy choice of just turning it on and turning it off. Um, but I would still, I'll still generally leave a work day, leave a shoot day with like that kind of buzz that I really have to decompress from. Just like a buzz, I'll have it actually after I've done an audition as well.
Hmm.
Um,
Yep.
I get like a real rush of adrenaline and like a real kind of up, and then
Mm.
it will crash.
Yeah.
So I think the kind of laying out things that help you decompress, uh, whether that even if it's like pretty indulgent, like a bath with like candles and
Mm.
stuff, do whatever your thing is, or if it's just really simple and you just play a little bit of Nintendo
Yeah.
or just have a nice hot chocolate something. But yeah, I definitely need to decompress after work.
Yeah, for sure. It's one of those things that I always find so interesting about actors where, like you say, whether you're in that method camp where, I mean, sometimes they stay in character like even off camera. They're like, they take it home with them, and I think that
Yeah,
that must leave some sort of imprint on you. I think, on your nervous system, because like you said, you are pretending, but your body doesn't know you're pretending. It's really your brain
absolutely.
convincing your body. So and I
Yeah,
think really when it comes to the emotional side of things, it's your body that keeps the score more than your brain. So I do find that kind of, like you said, it's definitely more healthy, I think, your approach, like switching it on and off, because
yeah,
yeah, you're just convincing your body that you're, especially for dramatic scenes, like that you're in this really difficult place, you're in this really like taxing situation, and then you just don't snap out of it. Like that to me just seems so difficult.
yeah. I think uh, psychologically, there's so much more to unpack after
Yeah.
doing those experiences and doing those things. And I don't think if I was method like that and if I lived in those spaces that I could be an actor, because a lot of the
Mm,
things I have to do are really harrowing. Um
mm,
and I couldn't have that be part of my actual lived experience. and
Yeah.
carry all the psychology that then would come with that, all the effect that would have
Hmm.
on my brain and yeah, my physiology even.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it does change you as a person, definitely, like in
Mm.
ways that maybe at first you probably don't even realize. You're like, oh, I'm over it. I move on to the next thing. And then maybe like a year later, you get triggered by something and you're like, oh, I did not unpack that job when I finished it,
Yeah, yeah.
which is really tough. You mentioned at the top that you grew up in a family that owned a sporting goods shop. So I'm really curious, did you have any like family sporting rituals or superstitions that were like came out of owning the shop or just generally like in your family?
Sporting rituals. We did no, we uh all the kids worked in the shop. Like,
Mm,
I guess that's what you did. Family run businesses.
of
We get the
course,
kids to
yeah.
do the labor. So there was like definitely a system of like growing up where all the cousins and everyone worked in the shop at some
Yeah.
points. And even like there's points where I was this kid and I was like fitting adult sports shoes on them
No.
and like learned how to fit shoes and like feel to see
Yeah.
if it fits them right, and that's that kind of stuff. And um it was definitely ingrained in the family in that way, almost like your rite of passage, that everyone went
Yeah.
through this process and went through that, and we were all very athletic. But I think those rituals almost didn't come out of because it was quite detached. It was so of us in our bodies that it
Mm,
was so normal, as opposed to an active choice that you're choosing to
yeah.
do. I nearly probably am more ritualistic about acting because it's an active choice that I'm choosing to do, and it wasn't ever in my veins and in my blood. I didn't just grow up into an acting family and we all go to the theater and do those
Yeah.
things. So maybe that's where those connections come more for
Mm,
me uh, than in sport.
that makes sense. My
Yeah.
closing question for each guest is the same. So we've kind of touched on it, but what rule or ritual or like regulation would you try to cross over from ice hockey to either acting or music or both? For it could be for an absolute laugh, but which would you try?
Well, the best rule in ice hockey, that you can just punch someone in the face and take 5 minutes and come back. I mean, I can't not say that.
Yeah.
That would
Yeah.
be amazing. I do though. I do that and it's across other sports as well, but I do think what would be so valuable, and maybe I'll even try to figure out a way to implement this into my acting and my puppetry for those times that we talked about where I struggle. But the idea of a personal best, like
Mm.
that, yeah, maybe your team doesn't win, but you hit your personal best in whatever.
Yeah.
Where it's so like I didn't get cast, I didn't get that part, but maybe that was like the best audition I've ever delivered,
Mm.
or the quickest I've ever learned 3 scenes, or I don't know how you
Yeah.
would measure it, but I feel like it would dispel a lot of the that constant feeling of failure, because we don't have a measure in acting for anything other than you get the part or you don't.
Yeah.
That's kind of it. Whereas this sort of, yeah, I really love the idea of having a personal best. You can still have all your own achievements, your own like player points for what you
Yeah.
do, even if that's like how many auditions like that you rack in, or how many times the
Yeah.
same casting director has asked to see you again and again and again. So that's, oh great, I've actually auditioned for them like 12 times now, so that
Yeah.
must mean they see something, that they like me, as
Yeah.
opposed to seeing that as like a stick to beat yourself with, of like they've seen
A
me 12 times and I'm
100%.
not cast. um
Yeah.
yeah, I think I would love to make the actor version of personal best.
That's awesome. I love that. I've literally never thought about it that way before. That's so awesome. And I think it's because, as you said, like you could be auditioning, sending in self tapes, and you never hear anything back. But
Yeah.
like, just again, just reframing, like, okay, that's one fact. That's one kind of side of the coin. But what have I achieved? And it is an
Yeah.
achievement to, like, as we just said, like build yourself up. You have to organize who's going to be your reader, you have to set up your camera, etc. Like you maybe have to edit a little bit afterwards. Like all of these things are, I think, just seen as part of the job or part of the process, but that doesn't mean that they're not achievements and that you shouldn't
Yeah.
recognize them. So yeah, I think you should definitely, like, imagine if that became like, I'm thinking like, explode the idea, and I'm like, oh, what if there was like a fantasy league of actors? Like how we could
Yeah.
how we could apply that if we expanded it to like whatever, how many actors. That would be amazing.
Yeah.
um Love that idea. Before I let you go, I want to make sure that folks know where to find your work slash your content, and also just kind of what you have going on at the moment or coming out soon. So first of all, where can people find you if they want to hear more, and what else do you have coming up at the moment?
You can find me on Instagram and YouTube. My handle is Youngster Becky. It's a Pokemon reference. And there is an indie horror film called One of Us that I shot last year. I don't know what the distribution of that will be yet, but there's a couple of articles out about it online. So I know I'm not breaking any rules by saying that I'm involved in it. I'm already publicly noted as being involved in it. But it's a really, really artistic and interesting horror film, and it's got an
Mm,
amazing celebrity cast with Sienna Guillory, Douglas Henschel, Kit Connor, Callum Woodhouse. I could keep listing. It's got Siobhan Fallon Hogan, who was in Men in
amazing.
Black, the lady who asked for the sugar water. Um, I'm a big, massive. She played my mum in it, and it was very exciting for me. I think she's
Amazing.
amazing. Um, and of course, the project that we worked on together, Bridie's World. Again, we don't know what the distribution of that will be, but I am allowed to say that I play Bridie. So I play Bridie in Bridie's World. There is a tiny teaser of that out on the
Yep.
Telegale Ireland socials that you can check out. And I think that's all that I'm allowed to talk about right now.
Amazing. And of course, Star Wars. Hello.
And of
I'm
course,
like,
Star Wars. Oh,
Star
yeah.
Wars.
That's hilarious. Of course, I'll forget to say that one. Yeah, Star Wars, no big deal. Just it's Star Wars. Yeah. Yeah. There's a puppet that I did that's actually in the trailer for it. Which is why I feel I'm like, yeah, I can say I did that one. So yeah, that's really cool, and that will be coming out in
Yeah.
Acolyte. It is amazing and will be amazing.
Think that's June on Disney Plus, right? It's like,
Yeah.
I don't know the exact date, but it's June, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, look, obviously there's a lot to look forward to. We're going to be seeing a lot of you, which is very exciting. Thank you so much for being on Your Player Mine and just sharing so openly. I really appreciate it, and it's been an absolute pleasure chatting.
Thank you so much. I've really, really enjoyed this.